Okay, so starting off with an introduction, I'm Ritika, the senior product designer for pipeline execution team, but I'm also covering for the pipeline security team for a while. And my presentation is about iteration. So we often talk about iterating through designs, but today I want to share an example of how we iterated our way into gaining more confidence in the vision and goal for our MVC for native secret solution. So we were careful not to start with the proposal that had gaps in experience because the user base is very sensitive for this particular feature for all the right reasons, though. So we decided to design our way into determining what would be a complete MVC in terms of what would user want and expect to accomplish using the very first iteration that would still bring good amount of value to them and would leave them keep coming back for whatever more we have to deliver. So, and at the same time, we also had to be really practical about what's feasible in the time that we were targeting to develop that in. And that's how this whole effort started. Now, of course, I would start off with talking about what is a secret. So a secret is a piece of sensitive information. And what I mean by sensitive information is for example, API keys, passwords, or just any type of credentials like keys to connect to external databases, external microservices, so that they would enable GitLab or a component built within GitLab to connect to other systems. And the reason that we started to work on this, how we identified this need in the market was through a series of researches, a lot of researches, and eventually we decided that the biggest concern in the software development industry today is security because, well, it is. I mean, we couldn't even keep account of how many security breach and data leak related articles we would have seen in just the last week. So keeping customers and companies' data safe, ensuring that the infrastructure isn't vulnerable to external attacks. This is definitely on the top of the mind of all the organizations. So that's the reason keeping sensitive information safe tops the list of requirements for organizations of all sizes. But this is it's too wide of a statement, as in keeping sensitive information safe. So this is what we had, we definitely did have a couple of jobs to be done that we were able to document already through a series of researches, like I said. But that key statement that would kick off the whole work was keeping sensitive information safe. There were many questions that were still not answered, how can we best ensure this integrates with other GitLab solutions? Who makes the decisions? What is the information that you want to keep safe? I mean, we did have some idea about what those tokens and what those keys would look like, but we wanted something more convincing. And how are our users expecting us to align with the industry standards? So based on all the information that we had at hand, we came up with a plan, how would we want to go about each step and also be very intentional about why we are doing these things, all the activity that we had lined up. So GitLab users, they can definitely leverage third-party secret storage providers. You would have come across the name HashiCorp Vault because we have an integration with them. And we also have talks of integration with many other service providers, but there's a lot when it comes to configuring those solutions and setting them up. So this definitely creates a lot of burden on the DevOps and engineering team. So we did have a window of opportunity there. So this is a rough plan, not rough, but the very initial plan that we had come up with. We would start off with the competitor evaluation, and then from there we'll just see how confident we are with the user stories that we end up with. And then what do we need to do next to gain more confidence? So I wouldn't just be very stuck to this, but rather I would move to how we kept on adding each step here. So through the competitor evaluation, we were able to understand what are the industry standards, expectations we have to align with, and also like some insights from what about the workflows of our competition do their users face problem with. So like trying to avoid the same pitfalls as others were. But besides getting an idea about the like overall user flow, which was pretty simple when we looked at from like a bird's eye view. So it was about adding a secret, accessing a secret, and managing a secret. And we also learned that most competitor offerings, they were really difficult to set up. As I had mentioned previously, they lacked real-time feedback. Not many were able to provide a really good communication channel between ops, developers, and compliance. And they were also not like, they couldn't do a great job with integrating secrets workflow with other software development processes, which was something that we can definitely do differently, leveraging the power of our platform. So combined with previous extensive surveys on secrets, this gave us some idea, of course, about like which direction we have to go. And so we thought like we're in a good position to like start discussing internally, like how each one of us perceived what this whole thing would be like. So we did a sketching exercise, and this was really engaging. The whole team joined in. They participated with like a lot of enthusiasm. They collected examples. They drew out visionary mock-ups of what they had in mind. And this was a great opportunity for us to kind of get on the same level of understanding, because that was really important since we were trying to work on something so huge. So we took these user stories that we initially, I would say, had like 30 to 40% confidence on. And then we based this whole exercise on that. And what we received from here, this further informed our like future plan. So using this exercise, we were able to understand what are the must-haves, nice-to-haves, and the pitfalls in a secrets concept. And this like helped us get an idea about what our MVC should look like, because the must-haves, they had to make it to the MVC. Because I mean, when it comes to the user stories for this particular feature, we realized that we cannot break the chain. So I would like, come to this so that we can talk more about it. So we started to like keep a record or document the user stories in this way. And so we realized that we cannot break this chain, but what we could do through iterations is probably like keep getting to the depth of each one of this, like enrich each of these steps in a way that keeps on adding value for our users. And the next step from here, because now we had a set of, now we had a very good idea about what we need to build. And the obvious next step was, of course, to like reach out to our users. And that's when we came up with our very first prototype, which had all like the most primary functions built in, or what we perceived were primary at that point. And it like allowed users to view secrets, like access the secret storage, then create a secret, and eventually like also come and like make edits to that, manage that. And we took this prototype, we formed a task around the user stories that we had with us, and we shared it with our users. And of course, like nobody held back their true feelings, which was really helpful for our team to be able to proceed. And that's fair. We received like really good insights. So what I observed from the feedback that we received was everybody was trying to like use it differently. Some were trying to understand if this could actually replace their secret management tools. Another set of users, they were trying to see if it can work in tandem with something else that they were using. While like there were a set of users who were just trying to see if like this can complement their GitLab CI/CD setup and help them like get the most out of it. And along with that, they also shared like what would work for them, what won't work for them, and what they really appreciated. Now, I would share just one slide from Erica's deck. like I was not sure if everything else was too confidential to share in our presentation. But anyway, this was really surprising for us, that we were like since the beginning trying to record the customers, like their user satisfaction with the competitor offering they were using. And after like the survey that we had just sent out, the responses indicated that their satisfaction level with what they had just seen, which was this prototype, was more than what they had with whatever they were using already. And like this was a really encouraging indicator for us, but at the same time we knew, like based on the feedback, that we still had a lot of work to do. And that's how we got to the next step, which is like finally coming down and like getting deeper into designing a prototype for MVC, or what we perceive as very close to the MVC, because like we have a much higher confidence in the solution that we are building. And this is something that the technical team can finally like get on with it. Like they can start thinking about how to implement this, especially the front end features. So we definitely took a lot of things away, because we realized that we are providing a few functionalities which were definitely not very useful for our users. And just to make sure that it doesn't take a toll on our development team, we just like got rid of many of those. Then there were some really good insights about how we were presenting environments and what users plan to do with those environments. And based on that, we like added a few more capabilities, like you would be able to add more than one environments at a time. And there should also be an option to like have secrets which are environment agnostic, for the lack of word, because it sometimes a secret is not related to CI/CD. And yeah, so like this whole workflow, it went through a good revamp, and we made sure that we are only giving to users what's absolutely necessary for them in the very first iteration that we plan to ship. And like these highlighted ones are the ones that we are including in the MVC. Everything else we have left, and we plan to like get deeper into it in the future iterations. So one vision that we have for future iterations is a higher amount of control. Secret management is a lot about like control, the related to access permission, related to like how you want them to rotate, expire. So we would only like make these features more advanced as we proceed, but we started to like, we wanted to start off with something very basic yet functional and yet very useful. And I think we have been able to like hit that milestone. Now, next up for us is sending out assignment number 2 to our early adopters group and see like what they feel about this particular draft of design proposal. And this is where we are at with secrets. We have made a lot of progress, and now we are keeping our fingers crossed. And that's it. That's the end of presentation, but I would like really appreciate to hear from team members, like, what did they think about this approach, and what is something else that they did in the past that helped them gain more confidence in the vision of what they were building, especially if they were building something from like scratch.
Anyone have any thoughts on that question? Is everyone eating breakfast?
I think part of it is there's a lot to take in there. I had questions along the way, and now I'm like, wait, which one do I ask? I'm really curious about, well, sorry, I should answer your question first. I can't say that I've, well, I did create the first like configuration of scanners for security scans. And your question was basically, how do you feel confident about building something from scratch, like not making improvements on it? But was that your question? Like, how do you feel confident about the MVC?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, for that product that I'm thinking of with the SaaS configuration UI, it was going to be helpful to have anything in the UI to make it more of a guided workflow rather than having the documentation, the docs up on one side of the page and like the YAML file on the other side of the page, or different monitors, whatever. So I also like tested with a prototype, understood like the tasks, the primary jobs, excuse me, that users would want to complete. And of course, there were like primary jobs and secondary jobs and tertiary jobs. So just making sure that they could easily complete the primary jobs, that was the focus for MVC. But I have a similar question when it comes to like, how do we know for sure what's really important for MVC versus future iterations? Because like with the research that I'm about to present, do you just go off of like what people bring up on their own? Or because sometimes you can just like show them a prototype and they can say, this is great, but this is missing, or I don't need this. But I think it's always challenging to like show a design that has some ideas in it, but then get them to think through exactly what is missing, like really have them test it and communicate like what is the most important things here for you versus like need to have versus a nice to have kind of thing.
Right.
That's my question too, actually.
Yeah. So something that like really helped our team with this was like in one of the research reports by Erica, like the research team had really captured the most important use cases that users had mentioned when it comes to secrets. So that was our starting point. Like we started off from there, and we like took it to our like we started to have discussions around it internally, just to have like a higher level of conviction among ourselves first. Now, based on that conviction, we formed the assignments. Like we decided on the tasks that we are going to give to users so that they would be able to relate better with it when they are like assessing what we are showing to them. But even in the questions that we like shared with them, we made sure that we get to understand like what emphasis they're putting on what they're seeing, the different elements that they're seeing on the screen. And from the responses, it kind of became somewhat clear to us that there's some parts that nobody talked about. There's some parts that everybody was very finicky about, that, hey, I would want to use this in a very certain way. So we also scheduled some interviews with the respondents, like, can you talk more about this? What exactly you had envisioned? And like all this information put together, it gave us like an idea about what is it that we cannot do without, like what absolutely has to be there, otherwise they wouldn't just like touch it. And we then started to pay more attention to those ones.
Do you think just by asking those questions about like, is this a need, or is this just like a nice to have, or it's a combination of like what they mentioned on their own and then follow-up questions?
Yeah, so follow-up questions, I would say, because like the moment you put any amount of leading hints there, it just gives an answer that would we want from them. So the tasks that we had designed, we made sure that like it was realistic. It was something that they were able to like connect with, something that they would be coming across. And then we just asked them like, how would you go about accomplishing this given this UI? So they themselves like gave a walkthrough about how they would do things. And then we also had some questions, very open-ended questions about like, what are the use cases that youth like come across day to day that we are kind of like missing out here. And that's how we got more idea about what more they would want to do with it.
Yeah, that reminds me, in this last study that I did, a lot of people would look at the prototype and say, yeah, this is helpful. Like I had questions about like, what would you want to group by? What would you want to filter by? And they would come up with things like they'd rather tell me like that they would use it, but then not actually need it than say like, I'll never need this. But of course, like, you know, on our side of things, building things out, we've got to prioritize like what the team is going to work on. So something that I think really helped is I would dig in a little bit more and say, like, can you provide a use case in which you would use that? And that would really get them thinking, like, and then sometimes I heard like, well, I guess it would be rare that I would use that, you know. So that starts to determine the priority too.
Yeah.
And before we end, I also wanted to mention that another facet of the jobs to be done that the research team has been working on, I think Michael Oliver has been sort of spearheading it, is ODI, outcome-driven innovation. And part of that is to look at your jobs, and after you've broken that down into needs, you take those needs and you can assess them. It's like a Kano analysis, if you're familiar with that, the same idea. And that helps you ask the users, you know, if they need this or don't need this on a Likert scale sort of thing. And then you can walk away with statistical significance of what features people actually want.
That will be helpful.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So I would say talk to your researchers on that.
Sure. I also just wanted to say, I thought it was really interesting to have participants on a Likert scale or whatever that scale was, satisfied to unsatisfied, have them rank their current tools if they're not GitLab, and then I'm guessing the prototype was what they were comparing it against, which, I mean, you know, is tricky because performance isn't coming into play with the prototype, but it probably is in their actual tools. Things like errors and stuff like that. So, but it's still an interesting way to measure whether or not it's an improvement.
All right. Thanks, Vitika.